It's the summer of 2022, and the best advice I have for real estate investors is to raise your rent. Make sure your rents are in alignment with market rents. Find out more in today's video. I'm Jennifer Rollins, landlord, educator, advocate, and broker at One Focus Property Management. You know, prices change every day to reflect market conditions. We see it at the gas pump. We see it at our favorite restaurant when the lobster dish is priced at market price. We see hotel and flight prices changing daily. So why are we so sensitive to the changes in rent prices? Well, there's a lot of societal assumptions about rent and the landlord-tenant relationship. You know, that the big, mean, greedy landlord is using their economic power to fleece tenants. But that's all in our heads. The truth is, if costs are rising and you don't adjust your pricing, you won't be able to keep up. Simple as that. The product that you're providing has an increased cost. Interest, therefore mortgage rates are rising. Materials and supplies, taxes, all of this is rising. And if you don't increase the prices of your rent, you're choosing to subsidize your tenants' housing expenses out of your own pocket. So you know you need to increase your rent, but where do you start? The very first step is getting very clear on what market rent for your properties are. Now, this does involve some research, and it's more than just seeking similarly sized and located properties. You need to be considering the inclusions, the appliances, and other features of the lease, including terms offered, to determine if the rent is really comparable, what you're comparing your rent to for another rent that you find. So it's really important to get into those details. It's not a simple calculation, but you can get that information pretty easily via the internet. If you're listing a property for a new tenant, that rent should be at market. No question there. But the more complicated situation is when you have a tenant in place, potentially they've been there for years and they've been an excellent tenant to have, but their rent is now 20% behind market. What do you do then? Well, it's not just as simple as raising the rent 20% and keeping on moving. No, we want to take care of our tenants and we certainly don't want to push them out, but there's more to adjust than just the rent. So I like to construct an offer that takes into account a lot of different factors. When the lease is going to end, what sort of utility inclusions there are, and are there things that I can do to benefit the tenant and my property that might encourage that renewal. So I might offer a renewal at 18 months, 12 months, and month-to-month terms, allowing the tenant some agency in picking what they're going to be going forward with. I may also incentivize a lease renewal with something for the property, a carpet cleaning, painting a room or two. Things like this that improve the property, improve the tenant's experience, and increase the likelihood of getting that renewal. The topic of raising rent is full of fear for landlords, and that fear comes from the perceived risk the tenant is going to take any change in rent or terms and use that as a reason to move out of the property. Well, that risk is much more highly perceived than it is real. And I can tell you that for a fact because I work with landlords' properties all the time, and when they come into our portfolio, oftentimes their current tenants are behind market rent. They may be long-term tenants, but they're paying far lower than market rent for the property. When we make these adjustments, we don't see tenants leaving at quite the rate that landlords fear they will. Because the truth is, if we're keeping their rent to market or less, they can't find a better deal for what they have. Now, that doesn't mean that they might choose not to continue renting at your property, but the primary reason is not going to be because you changed the rent. It's going to be because that property no longer fits them and their lifestyle anymore, and that's okay. I would argue that to avoid lease renewals and rent increases is simply laziness on the part of the landlord. Because even if not ever changing the rent kept a tenant from leaving the property, is selling your product at a discounted rate forever really better than putting in a little bit of work and selling it at full value? I don't think so. Our industry overvalues long-term tenancy to the point where it's become common belief that a rent that's below market, if it's for a long-term tenant, is better than turning over the unit and getting a tenant at market rent. It just simply isn't the case. It does take a bit more work, but That's what investing is. It's work for profit. I'll share with you the number one piece of advice I'm giving landlords this year in 2022, and that is to increase your rents to as close to market as you can. You need to evaluate your leases every year, even if they're on month-to-month terms, because your pricing conditions are changing every year, and so are market rents. Do you not agree with me? Do you think long-term tenants are the bee's knees and we should do anything we can to maintain that long-term tenancy? Tell me why in the comments. I'd love to discuss it with you. Share this video with a friend, give us a like or a subscribe, and we'll see you next week.